Good evening, you're watching Just the News. I'm Amata Balachandra. We're going to start off with Ukraine crisis. It's day 28. Here are the latest updates. Ukraine has announced 9 humanitarian corridors through which civilians can be evacuated. The Deputy Prime Minister, however, did not announce any safe corridor out of the heart of Mariupol, which is one of the worst affected cities in Ukraine. Now, Ukrainian presidential advisor has today said that he expected the active phase of the Russian invasion to be over by the end of April, as the Russian advance had already stalled in many areas. Now, speaking on local television, he said Russia had already lost 40% of its attacking forces and also played down the prospect of Russia waging nuclear war. Now, Ukraine has accused Russia of seizing 15 rescue workers and drivers from a humanitarian convoy trying to get food and water into Mariupol. Now, in the last couple of days, we've been seeing and reading reports of how there is a lack of food, water, and electricity in Mariupol. Now, Ukrainian President Zelenskyy has estimated that about 1 lakh civilians have still stuck in this city. This is extremely important for Russian military because it is the biggest port on the Sea of Azov and one of the Ukraine's biggest ports for export of agricultural products. Its capture would be strategically important for Russia. Meanwhile, the Office of the Prosecutor General of Ukraine has said that today that at 121 children have been killed in the war so far, which means in the last 28 days, 167 children have been wounded. Also, an update that came in today, Ukraine has said that Russian military forces have destroyed a new laboratory at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant that, among other things, works to improve management of radioactive waste. Now, the state agency of Ukraine has said the laboratory, built at a cost of 6 million euros with support from the European Commission, opened in 2015. Also, President Zelenskyy, in his live video address today to the Japanese parliament, warned of the dangers his country is facing from Russian attacks on nuclear plants, and he raised concerns over the site of the Chernobyl meltdown. Now, the Ukrainian leader also called for sanctions to continue to try to build international pressure to end Russian aggression. Meanwhile, Beijing on Wednesday described Russia as an important member of the G20 after Washington raised the prospect of excluding Moscow from the group. Now, China's comments come a day after what the United States has said. The United States Security Advisor on Tuesday said, and I quote, "We believe that it cannot be business as usual for Russia in international institutions and in the international community," end quote. In the meantime, Russia's ambassador in Indonesia has said that Putin is going to, he plans on attending G20 summit. Also, Poland has decided to expel 45 Russian diplomats suspected of spying against the country. In fact, Russia's ambassador to Poland has denied the allegations after he was summoned to the Polish Foreign Ministry earlier on Wednesday, and this update comes in. BBC has reported that they have now decided, Poland has decided to expel 45 Russian diplomats. Moving on from this big story now to a developing story in India. For the second consecutive day, fuel prices have risen. These are the prices in different cities. We start off with Delhi, where petrol is at 97 rupees per litre. Diesel is at 88.27 rupees per litre. In Mumbai, petrol is at 111.67 rupees per litre. Diesel is at 95.85 rupees per litre. In Kolkata, petrol is at 106.34 rupees per litre. Diesel is at 91.42 rupees per litre. In Chennai, petrol costs about 102.91 rupees per litre and diesel costs about 92.95 rupees per litre. In other news right now, and this comes in from Karnataka, reports have emerged of Muslim shopkeepers being banned from local annual fairs. Now, the annual festivals of temples in the coastal region of the state usually takes place between April and May, and this is coincidentally also happening right after the Karnataka High Court upheld hijab ban in educational institutions. Over the last couple of months, we've seen a row on over wearing of hijab in the state of Karnataka, in coastal belt especially. And there are reports now emerging. According to the Indian Express, organizers of the annual festival of the Mahalingeshwara temple, scheduled on the 20th of April, have barred Muslims from participating in the auction. The Hindu, in the meantime, reported that Hosa Marigudi temple in Udupi district refused to allot stalls to Muslims in an auction held on the 18th of March for the annual fair that's going to be organized this week. Now, post these reports that have emerged, there's been a comment that's come in from the Home Minister, who spoke to ANI and said, and I quote, "I have seen this, Muslim traders not being allowed to set up stalls at temples and media. I have sought reports from the police officials. The state government is keeping a close watch and will take action to avert any untoward incident." End quote. Also in the news, the centre has announced that all COVID containment measures will end on the 31st of March 2022. But this doesn't mean that you stop wearing masks. The centre has said the social distancing rules, along with wearing of masks, all of this will continue as is. An update now on what's going on in Bengal. The Calcutta High Court today sought a status report on the Birbhum violence from the West Bengal government by Thursday 2 p.m. That's when they said they want the status report. A division bench headed by Chief Justice Prakash Srivastava, taking up a suo motu petition and a set of PILs, directed the installation of CCTV cameras in the presence of the district judge and 24/7 CCTV surveillance of the scene of occurrence. Now, 8 people, if you remember, yesterday we told you that 8 people had died in the Birbhum district early Tuesday morning in violence that followed hours after the murder of a deputy Gram Pradhan associated with the ruling Trinamool Congress. The Indian Express has quoted sources in the SIT formed to probe this incident that about 20 people have so far been arrested. An investigation is on. There's also information that's come in that Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee is set to visit the village on Thursday. Also, some tragic news coming in from Secunderabad, where 11 migrant workers from Bihar died in a fire at a timber and scrap godown in Telangana's Secunderabad city in the early hours of Wednesday. Speaking to the Indian Express, Hyderabad Police Commissioner has said, and I quote, "For such an establishment with so much combustible material, there was no fire safety. There was only one exit, the shutter. No one except the owners even knew that the workers were living on the first floor." End quote. Now, officials suspect a short circuit caused the blaze. And they also say that short circuit was so intense that a mini truck used to transport the scrap was burnt to ashes. Also in the news, 28 senior journalists and media persons have now issued a statement urging constitutional bodies to uphold their constitutional mandate and take action against the increasingly frequent attacks against minorities, especially Muslims, in the country. Now, the appeal referred to the recent attempts to incite anti-Muslim sentiment at the screening of the film The Kashmir Files, the controversy of the hijab in Karnataka, targeting Muslim women on social media platforms, including the Bully By app and other incidents. And so the appeal has called for an intervention of the President, judges of the Supreme Court, and various high courts, the Election Commission of India, and other constitutionally provisioned and statutory bodies. Meanwhile, news coming in from Karnataka, where the High Court today upheld the framing of rape charges against a husband under Section 376 of the Indian Penal Code, saying, and I quote, "Marriage is no license to unleash a brutal beast." End quote. Now, the court order said, and I quote, "The institution of marriage does not confer, cannot confer, and in my view, considered view, should not be construed to confer any special male privilege or a license for unleashing of a brutal beast. If it is punishable to a man, it should be punishable to a man, albeit the man being a husband, end quote. Now, marital rape is not a criminal offense in India. The Karnataka High Court said that it was not talking about whether marital rape should be recognized as an offense, but that it was for the legislator to consider it. The court said, and I quote, "This court is concerned only with the charge of rape being framed upon the husband alleging rape on his wife," end quote. On to politics right now. Pushkar Singh Dhami was sworn in as the Chief Minister of Uttarakhand for the second time in 8 months. 8 cabinet ministers were sworn in along with Mr. Dhami, 5 of whom were part of the previous cabinet. Also in the news, an update on the G23 meet that we've been talking about over the last couple of days. There have been several meets. Now, after Sonia Gandhi met a few G23 leaders to resolve internal party issues, former Punjab Congress chief has said, and I quote, "Indulging the dissenters too much will not only undermine the authority but also encourage more dissent while discouraging the cadre at the same time," end quote. Now, the Congress president is likely to meet more leaders of the group in the coming days as well. On to business news right now. According to a report by the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, India's urban unemployment rate fell to 9.8% in July-September 2021 from 12.6% in the previous quarter as cases declined following the second wave of COVID. Now, female urban unemployment rate was lower after the second wave than before it. On to international news. This news coming in from Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka has been reeling under economic crisis that has led to electricity blackouts and shortage of essential goods and cooking gas. Now there are reports that troops were deployed on Tuesday at hundreds of state-run gas stations to help distribute fuel after a sudden rise in prices of key commodities and accompanying shortages as well. Now, ahead of the IMF talks in Washington in April, the government has now said that it would hire a global law firm to provide technical assistance on debt restructuring to fight the crisis. Meanwhile, in South Korea, now we've been reporting that COVID cases are increasing in China, but in South Korea, its total COVID cases has now reached 10 million. And the crematoriums and funerals are now reeling under pressure due to surge in COVID cases. Now, the surge is driven by the Omicron variant of COVID. Meanwhile, in Afghanistan, hours after the Taliban reopened high schools for girls for the first time in nearly 7 months, they announced that it will be closed again. Now, this means that girls above the 6th grade will not be able to attend school. According to Bhakta News Agency, which is a government news agency, a Ministry of Education notice said today that schools for girls would be closed until a plan was drawn up in accordance with Islamic law and Afghan culture. Moving on to sports news right now. This is also our good news for the day. India's badminton star Lakshya Sen has now reached into top 10 of the latest Badminton World Federation World Ranking. Now, he currently ranks number 9. This comes after he won a silver medal in the All England Badminton Championships. Now, 20-year-old Lakshya Sen became only the 5th Indian to achieve this feat. That brings us to the end of this bulletin. Thank you so much for watching. Good night.